Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the brand new Tier 9 Manteuffel. This is the tech tree Tier 9 for this manual secondary German line. The Prinz Adalbert was absolutely ridiculous at Tier 10, and I think that Tier 9 might actually be a little bit better. This ship loses a lot on its main guns, but the secondaries are actually a little bit better. If you get the perfect angle towards the stern, there's a 2-degree angle where we technically have better secondary DPM than the Tier 10. We also get these manual secondaries out to 13 kilometers still on the Tier 9, and it's an absolute blast to play, even into super ship games like we're about to see here. What is that, a Republic pushing us at 6 kilometers? Oh no. It is going to be absolutely ridiculous. I found these secondaries to be maybe a little more accurate than the Prinz Adalbert as well. I wonder if it's down to the 150 mil secondaries possibly being a bit bugged on the Prinz Adalbert. We'll take a look at that in a little bit when we test it out. But 32 mil pen everywhere on these secondaries. Excellent fire chance as well. We don't have to use manual secondaries, but since that's the gimmick, I've been trying to use them as much as possible. In fact, even forgetting about my main guns here, which are still quite solid. We get the same shells, the same guns as the Tier 10. Battlecruiser dispersion, 1.25 Sigma. So overall pretty solid. But the main guns, we lose 1 gun per turret here, so our DPM drops off a lot. And 6-gun ships, well, you know how I feel about those. Fortunately, we have many more than 6 guns thanks to these secondaries. But the AP shells are going to be quite solid, good pen, good damage, assuming that they actually hit here. And your firing angles are a little bit better here too. Thanks to having 1 less gun per turret, I guess, 27 degrees forward and 36 degrees backwards. We're still not great at kiting, but a little bit better than Prinz Adalbert at 43 degrees backwards. A little awkward on the dispersion there. Certainly running a full secondary build isn't helping our dispersion here. And even into a Condi, we can compete, I guess, at least at these closer range, when the secondaries are going to help us out so much. At long range, we are going to struggle. This is essentially an Admiral Schroeder hull, so we do have that 30 millimeters of deck armor, 27 millimeter bow, and pretty solid upper belt armor to shatter some HE. But at longer ranges, we will be struggling with this ship, especially into a lot of overmatch. We need to play island cover to get close. Just like the Tier 10, it's a ship that needs to play within its secondary range. It needs people to get close to it. Our torpedoes here are still extremely solid. Much like the Prinz Adalbert, we still are getting those 9.5 kilometer torpedoes here. Although we only get 4 per side rather than 5 per side, not a huge difference. Solid damage out of them. And that damage we got into that poor Republic, well, that was entirely secondary damage for nearly 40k. These secondaries absolutely shred at these closer ranges. Sovietsky Soyuz flat broadside, we have more than enough pen to get through to Citadelum. And now my secondaries at these ranges would usually be quite useless against the Soyuz, because they would aim waterline, belt armor, center mass, so they wouldn't pen anything. But since I can aim them, we can aim for bow and stern, where we actually are able to pen. We can aim up towards the superstructure. And while our main guns are busy reloading, we can guarantee some more damage in. Although we still want to be swapping to those main guns when they're available. It is very, very good in these brawling situations. Even in a kited position, the secondaries are going to help us out a ton. But I want to notice the difference here between the Tier 10 and the Tier 9. Look at the shell velocity difference. It's quite a bit worse here. And the other interesting part is the flight time on the Prinz Adalbert is different for the 128s and the 150s. This is where I'm wondering if there's something a little bit wrong there. 5.7 to 6.7 seconds on the Prinz Adalbert versus just a flat 6.7 for both of the secondary gun turrets on the Manteuffel here. Maybe that's contributing to it, I don't know, but Manteuffel actually managed to finish off this triple Republic test I've been doing even faster. But notice those firing angles. 19 to 25, oh, it's a little more than I thought actually. 6 degrees is all you have of that max secondary DPM. Otherwise, it is going to be worse. Prinz Adalbert can get more of its secondary DPM online more often. Perhaps we got more lucky with fires though to get a few seconds faster here. Although less hits for more damage from Manteuffel. Maybe the dispersion is a little bit better. Perhaps it's down to worse shell velocity. Sometimes that results in different ellipse being drawn on the ocean. I'm not sure, but Manteuffel secondaries are excellent. If you're only playing this line to get into brawls and use these manual secondaries, slightly better matchmaker, although tier 9, let's be honest, gets pulled up into super ships a lot, so it doesn't feel that much different than tier 10. It is a better version than the Prince Adalbert just because the secondaries are still incredibly strong, and the only thing we're really losing out on are those main guns. We're still having the excellent consumable layout, the fast damage control teams helping us to not take too much fire damage. 4 heals is great, still a 6-kilometer hydro. The ship is absolutely incredible. Now it is going into early access, of course. For 2 months, you're going to have to wait until you actually can get your hands on this ship. I do not recommend you guys buy into these early access programs, except for the tier 9. Every once in a while, the tier 9 is extremely cheap for you, okay? They're in random bundles in the armory, and usually with these random bundles, it's not out yet, so I can't check, but usually with the random bundles for early access, it'll tell you what's in the first random bundle. And the only time I'd recommend you engage with that is if you can get the tier 9 out of that first random bundle. With that, it's probably a no-brainer to get it. Otherwise, just wait. That would be my recommendation. Otherwise, you're going to spend so many doubloons just for a chance at getting these things. And it's tech tree ships. You can just get it in a couple months anyway. And back to our comparison with the Admiral Schroeder, we actually have worse detect than Schroeder by quite a bit, actually. Fortunately, we still have the ability to have our secondary range a little bit further than our main gun range, so we'll have to watch out a little bit for getting spotted when we might not want to, but otherwise, it's pretty much the same ship. Same turning circle radius, same torque protection at only 22%. That is gonna be tough. At least Prince Adalbert got 37, but pushing in with these, you're going to have to avoid as many torpedoes as you can. Otherwise, you're going to die very quickly. The main guns are a lot worse than Schroeder, though. Even though they're 350 mils, Schroeder only gets the 305s. It's just way worse DPM. Not only do you have a faster reload at 18 seconds versus 25 here on Manteuffel, you also get 8 guns instead of 6. Again, the caliber is bigger here, so that is nice to have. But the main guns will perform better on the Admiral Schroeder. The secondaries, though, as already mentioned, they have much better accuracy too compared to Schroeder. So you have manual control for sure, which helps a lot, but also this base accuracy is just better. This whole line, except for the lowest tiers, tier 6 and tier 7, have the Napoli accuracy on these secondaries, where Admiral Schroeder gets quite a bit worse. At 10 kilometers, it's 465 meter dispersion on the secondaries for Schroeder, where we get 240 on Manteuffel here. So a pretty massive step up there. Should result in a lot more consistency there. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, if we go down to 9 kilometers here, I want to show you guys the flight times again for these ships. Schroeder seems to match Prince Adalbert for the secondary shell flight times here. And every single other one, even including down to the tier 6 and the tier 7, the secondaries have been unified in their shell flight times for this entire new line, except the tier 10. I'm not sure why that is. You know, it was still amazing, okay? But I think it should be better than the tier 9, given that for the most part, we're getting less DPM on the tier 9, except for that very specific 6 degrees of angle. But you see how I'm often bow in or even just sitting broadside like this. We're still not getting the full DPM here. So it should be worse than Prince Adalbert. And yet I found it to be similar to maybe even a little bit better. If you are manually aiming these secondaries though, that improved flight time on Prince Adalbert will help you out. It's just easier to lead your target. And while I look at the build towards the end of this video, I do think this one is way better played just full secondary. If you want to go main guns, Prince Adalbert certainly can do it. A hybrid build there, tried that out a little bit, and it performed quite well. But thanks to losing a lot of main guns on the tier 9, that's kind of the main downgrade, you should probably go just the secondary build on this one, in my opinion. Maybe that's the bias against 6-gun ships talking, but for me personally, I would not run this one as a main gun build at all. The secondaries are just that powerful, and I just don't trust 6-gun ships for the most part. Even Battlecruiser Dispersion 2.15 Sigma is pretty solid. I still just don't quite trust it. The guns do solid damage, but not for me, man. I just want the full secondary build here anyway. In this game, I'm playing a little bit passive to start, and I think that's the main idea behind playing this ship. It's not as tanky as a battleship, not at all, but that's the best part about this line, is it's a cruiser. you should be spawning with a battleship or two on your flank. And since you're a cruiser, against enemy cruisers on your flank, I mean, Tiger 59, a tier lower, certainly, but I think it was a Seattle that spawned on this flank as the tier 9 cruiser. That's a pretty difficult matchup for that poor Seattle to deal with. So your flank isn't lacking a battleship, and you gain a little bit of a tanky ship here, but more importantly, one that can push and apply a ton of pressure on a flank in the right opportunity. You don't want to be tanking the entire enemy team, but waiting for your moment to push and do a ton of damage with these secondaries and these main guns, torpedoes. It is really, really fun playstyle. I think that's why maybe the battleship full secondary builds like Schlieffen may feel like it's a bit of a more difficult experience a lot of the time, because you don't have another battleship backing you up, one that maybe has a ton more HP or a lot more tankiness, that kind of thing. Here we are able to play that battlecruiser role while still having that battleship on our flank. I also found myself a lot of the time playing it like a light cruiser of all things, where you sit on an island and spam with your secondaries over that island until you find that opportunity to push out. Maybe you poke out and get your front guns online for a little bit, and then you back off a little. I found that to work incredibly well. Yeah, the secondaries don't have the accuracy of light cruisers, but they still have some pretty solid DPM characteristics and can apply so many fires. 32 mil pen is extremely good, just barely getting over that island for Seattle there. And now we're getting into the end game with Brawling. So we managed to save a lot of HP. That's the other element. With all cruisers, including battle cruisers like this one, we want to save a lot of our HP towards that end game. We need to be looking for islands that we can farm over without getting spotted, even though we do have the ability to bounce shells from a Montana if he knows where to aim, which is the bow or the stern sections. Even our superstructure would take a lot of damage. It's much better to get this farm going at these longer ranges over island cover. I mean, the accuracy looks pretty good, in all honesty. It felt better. Maybe this is, I don't know, maybe this is just code, but it did feel like the accuracy was a little better yet than the Prinz Adalbert. I don't know that there's something wrong there, but given how the secondaries were bugged the entire time that this line was in testing, maybe there's still some issues with it. I don't know. They got some quirks to work out with here, considering this is a brand new mechanic. I suppose that would make sense. Does make me wonder if these secondaries and this line will get a nerf at some point. How can you get good testing data if the main gimmick of the line, the manual secondaries, were bugged the entire time they were in testing? I don't know. Perhaps questions for someone else to answer, but it seems to me like the testing data might not have been fully complete here. Torpedoes having 9.5 kilometers of range is so nice for situations like this. We managed to catch the Monty with 2 of them. I should be using my manual secondaries here. Look at where they're aiming. Sure, a few of them disperse up into his superstructure, but everything else is hitting his belt armor and doing essentially 0 damage. I think at closer ranges, it matters more to be aiming your secondaries manually. It still helps at longer ranges, but certainly at closer ranges, you can do a ton more damage. At longer ranges, we'll try and pinpoint areas of the ship to get more fires. So in this case, Carl has the stern superstructure fire, so we'll try and aim a little further forward, get the bow fire, the bow superstructure fire, that kind of thing. The secondaries still fire, not to worry when you're only using your main guns, but being able to aim it is pretty nice. The flexibility there being a little bit reduced when you're using manual secondaries. You won't get secondaries firing off both sides of your ship. So if you're in a situation where there are enemy ships on either side of you, it can be a good idea to just leave them in auto so that you get that DPM going off of both sides. I decided to widespread torps there because I didn't want to give more broadside to fire a more accurate salvo. If you notice, when you widespread and you go at the most extreme angle you can, you get a little bit better angle on one torp. That front torpedo goes a little further forward than it would on a narrow spread. That's kind of why I did it there. Waiting till the last moment to swap to our main guns, and we do manage to finish off the Carl, collecting ourselves a Kraken in this game. Pretty ridiculous, a bit of a comeback there in the late game. We had some good teammates, though, to finalize that push. And we get ourselves an E. Yes, we get the E. Let's go. I gotta say, this is a really fun line. I've definitely been enjoying myself. Whether or not it's fun to fight against, I don't know yet. Certainly, that is an issue with some of these ships. Libertad line, for example. Colombo leg mod, for example. There's plenty of stuff that is great to play, but maybe not so great to play against. So I'm curious to see how it goes as more people get their hands on this line. Speaking of Libertads, maybe this is a little cathartic for you. It certainly was for me while playing. We get to secondary down the Libertad. The ability to aim higher, guaranteeing hits into his superstructure, means you get so much more damage out of it. And again, playing that light cruiser role. Not as worried about our main guns, at least for now. Trying to play a little bit safer, otherwise, you know, we would melt 2 Libertad secondaries normally. And most of the enemy ship's main guns there too. It's not a ton of HP. 62k HP is fine, but considering we get ourselves up into tier 10 and super ship games a lot of the time, and brawling ships tend to be spotted a lot of the time they're using their secondaries, you know, this one can shoot over a lot more islands, which you definitely need to do to stay alive longer. But you can die very quickly in these ships. I did notice that. We're not getting the absurd potential damage numbers we would get out of a Libertad, or like the Knesebeck, for example. Getting crazy potential damage out of some of those. That's not what's going to happen here. You got to pick your time, you got to pick your moments to push, or at least play a little bit safer. It's a lot more like a battle cruiser role, and again, you have the battleships on your flank. It's not like you're using up that battleship slot. If anything, you're taking the position of a cruiser or a light cruiser while still having similar DPM out of the secondaries, at least at closer ranges. You know, they don't reach out to max range like light cruisers would, but 13 is still pretty far range. Maybe that's something we could do to balance it. I mentioned that in the Prince Adalbert video. It's a very early thought, right? So it's not very well flushed out, but it'd be interesting to me to make these secondaries more accurate, but way less DPM. You'd have to balance it, obviously. You can't give them the DPM of proper cruisers because you still have better armor, better main guns, that higher caliber main guns, that kind of thing. But I wonder if reducing the range a little bit so it doesn't take that light cruiser role while being tankier and having the option of larger caliber guns too, I think that might be interesting. Reducing the automated damage. I think the general concept to me is really appealing because I want more control over my ship, and I want more control or more player engagement between players while fighting. And I think automated secondaries is a problem for that, right? Because it's automated damage as soon as you get into range. The more manual control it is, the more interesting it is to me. The more player versus player engagement is more interesting to me. So whether or not it would come out as a good idea to buff the accuracy and nerf the automated damage of the secondaries while massively reducing the DPM. Maybe I didn't stress that enough, but it would be a huge hit to DPM. Like maybe it's, you know, we have what, a 3-second reload on these secondaries? Maybe it's a 10-second reload. I don't know. But something that makes it much, much worse DPM, but allows me to be much more accurate in placing my shots, and all the time reducing the viability of just the automated secondaries. Something like that. It's still early days for my thoughts on this, as this is such a new concept, but I've been absolutely having a blast playing these ships, finding positions to get close enough to use the secondaries, as well as periodically firing the main guns. You can apply a lot of pressure with the secondaries, forcing people to turn broadside onto your main guns, perhaps. You don't have a ton of overmatch with them, so picking your timing to fire when people are broadside is really, really important. You're not always going to get those broadside salvos, so maybe swapping over to the HE could be good. We do have decent pen on the HE, an alright fire chance, but again, the reload is just so long here. It's close to battleship reload on these main guns, so it is a worse battle cruiser than we see from just main gun battle cruisers. Like this tier, we get Alaska, A-Gear, that kind of thing. They have much faster reloads on their guns. And they don't have near the secondary power, though. Let's be honest, the secondaries here are absolutely crazy. This Missouri, I don't really want to fight at such a close range. I'm trying to hide my vulnerable bow. So another thing we can do is only expose our side and not expose our bow is a good option to go for. And then, of course, in the late game, we can make plenty of hydro pushes into destroyers. That's a really, really powerful tool. Assuming you hold a lot of your HP till the end game, you don't get one shot early on, then this ship becomes incredibly powerful. Just like all cruisers, right? They have so much more utility, so much more flexibility than battleships do, thanks to their higher DPM, but generally less armor. They get better in the late game. And pushing like this, catching the DDs off guard here, perhaps, with our 6-kilometer hydro. And I'm leaving the secondaries on auto here, mainly to make sure I avoid those torpedoes. That 22% torp protection is not great. And also, we were getting a little both sides action. And then as soon as I take over on the secondaries, we actually start losing DPM. Because I guess I'm missing or something. I don't know. Maybe it's just dispersion into a Jaeger at those ranges. But we do manage to finish them off with our main guns. And then it's just the last few ships left over here. But let me know what you think about this line in the comments down below. I've honestly been having a really, really good time with it. Maybe it's just because it's a new concept. I often have a better time playing this game when there's something really new and fresh like this. It's fun to try and figure out the quirks of it and optimize and figure out when best to use the gimmicks and when to maybe not focus on the gimmicks so much and just play safer, more standard play. And I've been really enjoying figuring out positions that work with this ship. Playing it a bit like a light cruiser behind islands has been very, very fun. But maybe they are a little bit too powerful. Let me know in the comments down below. So of course, definitely go for the secondary build on a ship like this one. Again, those main guns did get nerfed down compared to the tier 10, which makes sense. I mean, a whole tier lower. This can fight tier 7s, by the way. 13 kilometers of manual secondary, just crazy, man. Worse shell velocity, but maybe better dispersion thanks to Prince Adalbert having that weirdness with the shell flight times thing that we've already mentioned. Still having the 9.5 kilometer torps here is great. Sure, you don't get 5 per side, but 4 per side is still absolutely devastating in the right situations. Good detection, 11.7. Sure, it's a little bit worse than Schroeder, for example, but we have a lot more tools at our disposal compared to that ship, especially the manual secondaries, and they have better accuracy. Rudder shift is a little slow. Turning circle radius, it's just okay. HP is decent, but that torp protection becomes a bit of a problem. As for the builds on the upgrades here, full secondaries, and since your secondary mounts, main gun turrets aren't ever knocked out permanently anymore, huge buff this update. Absolutely amazing change for wargaming. Your main guns, your secondaries, your torpedoes, your AA mounts are no longer permanently knocked out for the battle. They will slowly build themselves back up, and if they get knocked out. Really good change by wargaming. So going with damage control party mod 1, we could also just go main armaments mod 1 to guarantee those stay alive too a little bit more, rather than the secondary armaments that I would have taken all the time on a ship like this one in the past. Fast acting damage control teams here is excellent, as is having 4 heals on this ship. 6 kilometer hydro, really good too. Course, Lutjens, and a build like this one. Would be nice to get a little bit more HP, of course, but it's hard to fit it in when we want to be taking Pack-a-Punch, we want to be taking Top Grade Gunner, we want to be taking Concealment. It's a little tricky to fit it in. Of course, AR and then Superintendent, because not only for an extra heal, but extra damage control is also very important on a ship like this one. As for the armor layout, looks very similar, right? At least on the exterior, 27, 30. Those are the main problem points that we also saw on Prince Adalbert. But 100 or 10 millimeters less on the belt here. Not a huge difference, but it is there. The other thing being our turtleback is also like 10 millimeters less and 15 millimeters less here. Not a huge difference, but you certainly can be citadeled through this. It happened a couple of times to me while playing this ship. Mostly when I was turning, though, so kind of that typical issue of when you're in a turn, that's when the angle changes, I guess, and at longer ranges when it's more plunging fire coming through. So you're not invulnerable when you're broadside, certainly. It still is a battle cruiser style hull rather than a battleship. So you will have to watch out. It's not kind of this all-powerful tank that you can just full send into the enemy team. But man, is it so much fun to play a ship like this one. We'll have to look at the tier 8 and certainly the tier 6 and 7 become interesting as they get worse dispersion on those secondaries and they don't actually get a heal at those lower tiers. So curious to see how that actually performs because having healing is pretty important for a playstyle like this one. But that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching and have a great rest of your day.